Hi, in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at creating Xmonad style keyboard shortcuts for Gnome. Now the way that we're going to be doing this is using dconf, gsettings and the system keyboard settings. So what I've done is use dconf. So if I come across here and open dconf, dconf is a GUI application you can install with sudo apt install dconf, and it has a list of options that you can go through and change and rebind the keys. And you can do this the GUI way, but you can also use G settings. So if I come across here, what you see is I scroll down here. What I'm using is G settings to actually change all the settings in dconf, which is much faster than going through and clicking them one by one. So what I'm going to do is actually go through the keyboard shortcuts. So what I've done is remap the H, J, K and L keys. So Super H will move to the workspace left, Super L will move to the workspace right, and what we've got here is Super J will switch applications and Super K will switch applications backwards. So these keys are normally bound to Super and Tab and Super and Shift Tab, but that's to do Super Shift Tab is a bit of a faff with your left hand. So what I've done is changed it so we can move to the workspace left with Super H. And just select that so it comes up there. Super L to move back to the window here. And then we've got Super J, which will bring up the application launcher. It takes a little time for it to actually come up on the display here. Okay, there we go. So Super J is moving forwards, Super K is moving backwards, as you can see. So that's an easy way to move workspaces and switch the applications just by holding down the Super key and keeping your fingers on H, J, K and L. Then what we've also got is to switch workspaces directly. So what I've got is dynamic workspaces, and I've just set this up for 4 workspaces. So I can do Super 1, and that switches to the first workspace, Super 2, the second, Super 3, the third. Now what we've got is actually moving windows to a particular workspace. So what we've got here is Super Shift 1 moves the window to workspace 1, Super Shift 2 to workspace 2, Super Shift 3 moves the window to workspace 3, and Super Shift 4 moves the window to workspace 4. Little fly there. So what I'll do is I'll create if I open this dconf window and unmaximize it a bit. Let's see if I can resize it. Can I resize it? Okay. No, and you bugger. Hang on. There we go. There's a little tab thing. So with this selected, I can go Super Shift 2, and you'll see that's now moved to the second workspace. I can do Super Shift 1, and it moves it back to the first one. That's an easy way to actually move windows between the workspaces. And the way I've got the workspaces set up on Gnome is that the workspaces only apply on the primary display and don't affect external monitors, so that when I'm switching workspaces, it's not going to move whatever I've got on my main display. Okay, the other thing I've actually forgotten is to actually move move a window to another display. So I've got to put the notes in here, but if I do Super Shift L, so let me just open dconf again here. You won't see this because I'm not capturing the external monitor as well. I'm just capturing this screen. But if I do Super Shift L, that moves that window to my main display. And if I do Super Shift H, it moves it back to this display. So it's really useful if you've got a window here and you want to move it to your external display. Just do Super Shift L to move it to the next display. Super Shift H will move it back again. So that's really useful. For instance, if you've launched a video on this display and you want to move it to your main monitor, that's an easy way to do that. So next thing we're going to cover is toggle full screen. Now normally this is bound to F11, which requires you to take both your hands off the keyboard. You know, press a lot of keyboards, you have to press like a function key and then F11. So you've got to take both your hands off the keyboard to, you know, press your function key and then F11. So what I wanted to do, if I let me come back to this window here. So I want to maximize this. So if I double click this, what you'll see is this window here. Hang on, not showing it. Come on. All right, okay. It's not showing it on OBS. Oh, for God's sake. Okay. Let me see if I can just get this to pick this up. Sorry, Wayland's being a bit funny. Okay, there we go. So excuse the dock there. It's still showing it for some reason. But as you can see here, the issue, if you just maximize stuff, what happens is you still have the bar up here at the top, and then you have the header here. There are extensions to hide the bar, but we don't really need those, because what we can do is using F11, you'd put this full screen, which I've bound to Super S. So let's see if this shows up. Of course, it's not showing. Oh, there we go, Super S. So as you can see there, that's now full screen, and the window has no longer got a title bar, and the little bar at the top has now disappeared. So I can do Super S, and you can see it's toggled back to this size. And if I come back across here, you'll see it's gone back normal. So Super S, we'll put it full screen, and there's just, oh, there we go, and Super S back again. Okay, and what I'm going to do is actually just come across to Emacs, because there's actually a bug with Emacs going from this size to full screen and back again. So I'll see if I can demonstrate this. So if I put this full screen, okay, what's happening is you can see it's actually got a big black thing there. And if I toggle it out of full screen, it's actually doing it now. It's actually working now. Let me just quit Emacs and restart it again. Okay, so what I've got is I've set Emacs to start its screen's full size. And now when I resize Emacs, like toggling it between maximized, it works. And then if I do Super Shift, Super S, it will go full screen. I can take it out of full screen again. It goes back to the maximized state. And then I can drag the window, and what happens is it goes back to its normal size. So I'm just going to quickly show you this setting for Emacs. So if I just put this back full screen, and back, you can see it. Okay, it was just doing a bit weird glitching in OBS. So if I come into my .config Emacs init.el, what you see here, we've got these two settings. Add to list, initial frame, A list, full screen maximized. Start every frame maximized. Add to list, default frame, A list, full screen maximized. Now there is a option instead of maximize called full both, and that does put it totally full screen without the bars. But the problem is, if you then come out of that window, what happens is the window still says full size. It doesn't snap back to this size. So that's why we start Emacs like this, and then we can press Super S. It's going to go full screen, Super S again, and we can then come out of it, and the window will be resized properly. So that's Emacs full screen. Next one we've got is close window, which I've bound to Shift, Super, and C. So if I just come back across here, and I'll spawn another terminal. If I press Super Shift C, it will close the window. So that's another sort of Xmonad style keyboard shortcut. The next one is the application view, and this is typically, like super, when you press the super key. And what I've done is I've actually moved the key that toggles the application view and everything to command super right rather than super left. So if I press, let me just come back across to a window here. If I press super control and P, what you'll see is we have the application launcher come up here. We've got all our applications and workspaces, and we can, search here and launch applications. So now come across here. So those are the main keyboard shortcuts. So what I'm going to do is actually go through how we set these. So what we've got here is G settings, and what we're going to be doing is changing the org gnome shell key bindings. So I'll just come back across to dconf, put this full screen, put this full maximize rather. So if we come into gnome shell key bindings, I think it is. Let me just double check. So gnome shell key bindings switch to application. Right. Gnome shell switch to application. So this is where I've actually changed a lot of the stuff. You can see here, toggle application view. Okay. What are the other settings? Okay, that's the other one. Org gnome shell extensions dash to dock. What we actually need to do is disable some of the dash to dock settings. If you disable the dock in Gnome, what happens is when you actually launch Gnome, it will, instead of defaulting to the desktop, it will actually start up in the overview mode. So if you disable the dock entirely, what will happen is instead of showing up as the desktop when you launch in, it will actually show up sort of like in this kind of view. I think it's it will show up in the sort of application overview, which is really annoying. So you can't actually disable the dock from what I've seen without it causing weird effects. So what we're actually doing is resetting all the keys that normally show up, because normally if you press super 1 or super 2, what will actually happen is it will launch the application listed in the dock. So like super 1 or something would launch the first application, super 2 would launch the next one. So what we do is we disable the dash to dock key binding so that we can reuse them to shift to different workspaces. So workspace 3 by pressing super and 3. So we actually disable the dash to dock, some of these settings here in org gnome shell extensions dash to dock. So if I just come back across to dash to dock, you'll see these are all the extensions, and what I've done is I've actually disabled all those keyboard shortcuts so that we can actually reuse those keyboard shortcuts. And again, this is for shift, so this is how we can use shift to move windows between different workspaces and also different displays. What we're also doing is we're rebinding the activities key to super R, so the overlay key. So typically when you press the super key, the Windows key, the command key on Mac, what's going to happen is it's going to be bound to the overviews view. So that's the reason why I've moved it to super R. I'm just pressing super R, and that will come up there. So what that allows me to do is reuse the left super key to bind it to moving windows and that kind of thing. So we also toggle set the toggle overview. We set that to nil. I don't know if I did focus on. I'm not. Yeah, focus on pointer change rest false. And then what we've got here is the switch application. So all Gnome desktop WM key bindings, switch applications, Super J, and to switch backwards is Super K. So we're coming to Gnome desktop WM key bindings. So Gnome desktop WM key bindings. You should see this is a list of some of the key bindings, and I've kept a lot of them, but I'm actually sort of changed a few of them with the G settings and the dconf. So this is here, move to monitor left and move to monitor right. So this is Shift, Super, and H to move the window to the next monitor on the left. Move the window to the next monitor on the right, and I'll put those notes in the documentation as well. So that's where a lot of the key bindings are stored. They're sort of spread around in different places. Some are in Gnome Shell, some are in desktop WM key bindings, and there are some that are actually only available in the Gnome system settings, keyboard stuff. So this is switch to move to monitor. Yeah, that's the one I've done. Close window, toggle full screen. The other option that's really useful is centering windows. Typically what happens is by default when you open a new window it's going to appear in the top left, I believe. And what this will do is this will center new windows. So whenever I open a new window, you can see the window centered in the middle of the screen, which is much more convenient than having it sort of stuck up like this. So that's another option. So those are most of the dconf settings, but what we also need to do is come into the system settings and then come down to keyboard, and you'll see down here keyboard shortcuts, view and customize the keyboard shortcuts. And what it seems like is that some options aren't available in the dconf settings and can only be set in this section here. So what you'll see here is that I've got, it will actually show you how many items in these have actually been modified. So what I'll do now is actually go through and show you the ones I've modified. So in navigation, what you'll see here is move to workspace left. So what happens is some of these you've got to actually set in here and not in dconf. So additionally what you need to do is come in here, navigation, click that, and then super, let me just put it back in. They're going to let me do that. Okay, I'll just escape from that. So move to workspace left is super and H. Move to workspace right is super and L. And then what we're doing here is move window one monitor to the left, shift, super and H. Move window one monitor to the right, shift, super and L. I thought I had those. Yeah. Okay, so some of these actually show up from dconf, but I'm pretty sure that there was a couple that you actually had to come through and set. I think it just may have been these two here, move to workspace left and move to workspace right. Okay, and here's the other ones I've got set up. So I think these are from dconf. Move window to workspace 1, so that's shift, super, and you can see these are, because the shift button is pressed, we're getting the symbols instead of the numbers here. So that's workspace 1, workspace 2, workspace 3, workspace 4. You can see here switch applications. Super and J. Now this is one thing I should mention, is you'll see in dconf there is a setting to switch applications and switch applications backwards, but in these settings there is only the option to switch applications. So that's why we use dconf. So we can set stuff in dconf and it will show up in here, but there are some options in here that you can only access through dconf. That makes sense. So switch applications, super and J, and if I come back to dconf, if I can remember where the thing was, switch workspace, switch applications. Okay, so org gnome desktop wm key bindings. So org gnome desktop. Oh, I think I was in the right section. WM key bindings. Let me just scroll down and see if I can find it. It should be somewhere. I think it may be down further down here. Yeah, so you can see here, move to workspace. So you can set this up. You can set keyboard shortcuts to move stuff to 12 different workspaces. And yeah, okay, you can see here, switch applications and switch applications backwards. And what you'll see is in the Gnome settings keyboard view and customize shortcuts, there's only an option to switch applications. There isn't an option in there to switch applications backwards. So that's why that key binding doesn't show up in here. So that's just to clear up, you know, why some stuff shows up and some stuff doesn't. Anything else I've got here? We've got the switch to workspaces, showing up in here. Super 1, Super 2, Super 3, Super 4. And let's go into the next section. Sound and media. What I typically do is bind. These are like player CTL, which I've shown you in a previous thing. Basically, this allows you to play and pause videos without the window being focused by pressing a keyboard shortcut. So by pressing Alt, Super and Space, that's going to toggle play and pause on any video that's playing either in something like MPV or Chrome or Firefox, and I believe that it uses Empress to do that. So that's the one thing I change under sound and media. And we've got system here. I disable the lock screen button because I was always hitting it by mistake. I also disable the button to restore the keyboard shortcuts in case I accidentally hit that keyboard shortcut and reset all the keyboard shortcuts. I show all applications using Control, Super and P, which is sort of the key binding that I would typically use with Rofi on Xmonad. And then I disable the show the overview, which would be typically bound to Super A, I think it is. And I don't need that. And then Windows, what we've got here is close window, Shift Super C. So that's how we close the window instead of, Control W. But you can change these however you like. Hide window, I think that's disabled. What other ones? Oh yeah, toggle full screen mode, as I was saying. Super S, much more convenient than F11. And I think that's all of those in there. And then what we've got down here is custom shortcuts. So in here, what I'm doing is I'm launching Emacs with the Emacs client with Control Super Return. And I'm launching a terminal with Shift Super Return. So Shift Super Return opens a new terminal window, and Super Control opens up Emacs there, and you can see it's open up full size. So I can easily put that full screen, come out of full screen, it's maximized, and then the window is restored to this size. And here what we've got is a keyboard shortcut for a script that I wrote called, that basically takes the contents of the clipboard and plays it with MPV, so that you can go into YouTube, do control, click on a video and copy the URL, and then just press a keyboard shortcut and it will open the video in MPV. So that's where you set everything. You have to set some things in the system keyboard settings, but most can be set in dconf. And again, what we can do is, instead of having to manually go through dconf and go through all of those different sections, we can actually do this on the command line and actually change those settings using gsettings. So what I've done is actually put all these different options here so that you can unbind stuff. And again, if you just come back into dconf, if you mess anything up, there's actually a way to restore these. So let me just see. You can reset visible keys, reset view. But what you can do is, if I can find one, okay, close window, for example. So I've changed this keyboard shortcut. If you just want to reset stuff, you can just come back and toggle this, use default value, and it'll reset everything. There's probably a way to reset reset all the dconf settings for keyboard and everything, maybe away somewhere, but you can go through and you can individually toggle these back on if you make a mistake and do anything. So most of these settings are, hang on, we go org gnome. So the top level is org gnome. Then what you'll see is you've got several sections down here. You've got shell, and you've got desktop and shell are the main one. So desktop will show you all the application folders and everything, and down the bottom you've got WM, and then you've got preferences. So a lot of the preferences are stored in org gnome desktop WM key bindings. So you can come through and you can change those manually if you want. And let me just, is there anything in preferences? Yeah, there's stuff in preferences as well. You can turn off, automatically raise the focus window. And there's also a load of settings on a GNOME shell. You've got like application switcher here, extensions, key bindings. So there's a lot of key bindings in here that you can change, like toggle application view, change the keyboard shortcut for showing the little message that comes up here. It's not actually showing up in Wayland. Okay, there, slight delay. You've got keybinds, overrides, Windows switcher. I don't think there's anything there. So most of the settings are in either GNOME shell or GNOME desktop. Desktop WM key bindings. So that's the location of where most of the stuff is set up. And once you've sort of set this up, it's really as close as possible to get to sort of like an Xmonad kind of style experience as you can with GNOME, because you can easily switch between workspaces like this. Here we go, it's coming up now. If I open a new window, I can easily move that. So if I want to move this window to workspace 3, I press Super Shift 3. Okay, I want to move that to workspace 2. Do the same thing. So now we're in this view. What we want to be able to do is actually easily switch between applications. So that's why I use Super J and Super K. So Super J, it takes a second for this to come up. So Super J, go forward. Okay, and I've got switch to Firefox there. I can switch back to Emacs, so it's a bit of a delay on the capture, and then it switches to Emacs. And the reason why you want to actually switch applications in this fashion is because the one issue that you're going to come across is focus. So what I mean by that is you need the window to be focused. So if I can come across to something here, close that. This window doesn't actually focus yet. Okay, it does now. Sometimes when you're switching between windows, if I can actually demonstrate this, I can't. What you find is sometimes that the window doesn't actually have focus. So you start trying to type and another window has got focus. Or what happens is sometimes you think a window has got focus and you close it and it closes the video on another screen, for example. So it's always good to switch focus using Super J and Super K, and that's just going to switch to the application and give it focus so that you can start typing in it. So if I can switch between windows like this with Super H and Super L, so very quick, and that's basically the equivalent of swiping left or swiping right on the trackpad. And it's just a keyboard shortcut I wanted to have, so I didn't have to use a trackpad basically. So we can easily move. We can move windows. Let me create a new window. So again, it's easy to move the windows. You can see, easy to kill the windows. Super Shift C. Want to maximize this window. I want to put the window full screen. I do Super S. So you can see that's sort of toggling. That's much more convenient than taking your hands off the keyboard and doing F11. So what this basically means is that we can keep our hands on the H, J, K and L keys, and our left hand. So our left hand's the modifier, and our right hand's the action. So we've got the super key. We can do, switch windows really easily. We can move windows to different workspaces. We can move them between different screens easily. We've got an easy way to maximize these. So if I put that full screen, come on, Wayland. Okay, there we go. That's maximized. I can now put that full screen, toggle it back again, and then move the window, and it's going to resize to the original size. So I think that's sort of an improvement on the default set of key bindings that Gnome uses. And basically, the way I typically work is I'll have 3 workspaces like this: full screen terminal, full screen Firefox, and full screen Emacs, and then full screen Firefox on different workspaces on my laptop. Then I want the display to be not affected by the workspaces. So if I just come across back into here and show you the settings, come out. Yeah. So if I come into the settings and come across to, I think it's multitasking. Yeah. So what we've got here, I've disabled the hot corners. And this is the default setup. Dynamic workspaces automatically remove empty workspaces. So what happens is, if you, for example, if you've got something on workspace 1, 2, and 3, so if I kill this, now come across to 1, Firefox was on workspace 3, but because I've killed the application running on workspace 2, Firefox has now switched to workspace 2. That's one slightly confusing thing if you're coming across from Xmonad, in that it will rearrange stuff. So if you remove something on workspace 2, workspace 3 will then move to workspace 2. Equally, if you've got you can't switch to workspace 4 if there's nothing on Workspace 4. So you can only switch, see I can switch between Workspace 1 and Workspace 2 because there are applications running on those. And I could switch to Workspace 3 and open something on this display. But I can't switch to Workspace 4. That makes sense. Now this is the important setting here, Workspace on primary display only. And what you'll see here is that it's showing two displays, your laptop display and your next monitor. And what this will do is means that the workspaces only appear on your laptop and not on the other screen. And the reason why, at least I want this, is because I don't want my whatever's on the other display to be shifted when I switch workspaces. Because what that would mean is if you're watching a video and then you switch workspaces on your laptop, the video would disappear because it's on Workspace 1. If you switch to Workspace 2, that'd be a completely different display on the external display. I think there may be a way to set a window to be displayed on all workspaces, but you know, it's just really annoying to do. And what I found is when you use systems that do that, what I found is using years ago Mac OS X handles workspaces that sort of way, is that there'd be a flicker every time you switch workspaces, even though you got the video set to be displayed on all workspaces. Every time you switch, there would be like a flicker in the video as it'd be switching workspaces. So that's why I have workspaces on primary display only and not on all displays. And also the default is include applications from all workspaces and include applications from all monitors. There is a keyboard shortcut which I think was it Alt and Tab? Is it Alt and Tab? Yeah. So you've got Alt and Tab, and what that will do is that will show you windows that are on the current workspace. So you can see when I was doing Alt and Tab, it's not showing Firefox because that's on another workspace. But if I do Super J or Super K, it's actually going to show me all the workspace, all the applications running, and I can easily sort of switch focus to them. Okay, so is that coming up? Yeah, there we go. The other thing to note that's different from Xmonad is on Xmonad, typically you can warp the cursor. What that means is if I move this window to another display, what would happen is the mouse would move across at the same time. That doesn't happen on Gnome. So you do get into a situation where you're sort of moving, you move stuff across, but you're going to have to manually sort of move the cursor between displays. There is a tool, which I can't think of the name, that allows you to sort of create a keyboard shortcut that will move the mouse, but basically you got to run it as root or something, which didn't sound very good. And when I tried it, I couldn't ever get it to work. So that's one sort of slight drawback with Gnome, is that you don't get warping of the cursor when you move windows between displays. And that's why it's very easy to actually have think you've got a window focused and you close a window and you've closed the wrong window. So that's why I'd always recommend sort of switching, using the application switcher to ensure that when you switch applications, that the application actually has focus. So quick rundown, we've got the HJKL keys again. Super H to move workspace left, Super J switch applications, Super K switch applications backwards, Super L move to workspace right. We can switch to workspaces with Super 1, Super 2, Super 3, Super 4, etc. We can move windows to workspaces with Super Shift 1, 2, 3 and 4. We can toggle full screen with Super S. We can close the window with Shift Super C. We can show the application view with Super Control P, and that's basically that view. And I forgot to put the notes here for moving the window. So to move a window across the screen, and just come on, there we go. Let me open a new window. So if I want to, you won't be able to see it because I'm not capturing the other display, but if I do Super Shift L, that's moved the window to my next monitor. If I do Super Shift H, it moves it back. So it's a really convenient way of being able to move the windows. So we've got the option to move windows like this to different workspaces on our main display, and we can also have a keyboard shortcut to move the window across to another monitor as well. So for me, this basically is my Xmonad sort of workflow. You know, I can put that, I've got that full screen, and let me bring up Emacs again. So open up Emacs. I can put that to display 2 and move that across to display 3. So now I've got full screen terminal, full screen Emacs, full screen Firefox. So if I press Super S here, you'll see the bar comes up. So this is the best way to hide that bar instead of using an extension to do this. And the problem with Gnome extensions is I've tried them before, and what can happen is you do an update for Gnome and the extension hasn't been updated, and then you can't even log into Gnome. So that's why I wouldn't use extensions at all generally, because there can be sort of some issues that come up if they're not updated at the same time as the system. It can mean that you go to try and log into Gnome and it just doesn't log in, and then you kind of got to go into boot into Xorg and try and fix the issue. But basically, this means I can go easily switch between workspaces 2, 3. I can move windows across. So everything I could do in my Xmonad workflow, I can do on Gnome. With some added advantages as well. You know, I can search for files like, you know, is it going to show me my file list? No, maybe I haven't got that set up, but it's not too. I haven't found any other application launcher that will actually work on Gnome. So I'll come out the application launcher here. Typically, I'll do something like Rofi on Xmonad, and that doesn't work at all on Wayland. It has really weird issues. There is a Wayland fork of Rofi, but I couldn't get that to work. I've tried other application launchers. There's a few that work, but they tend to be GTK, and they were just unbelievably ugly, badly designed. So I haven't found any application launcher that works properly on Gnome. So realistically, you're stuck launching the applications like this, and that can be a bit annoying. And because on the second display, what happens is that the window kind of grows smaller. The window doesn't stay in place. It kind of goes smaller as you go into the application view. The other issue is when you're on the second display. So if I press the application overview key here, you'll see all this shows up, and I can search for stuff. If you launch this on your other display, all this stuff still comes up on your laptop, which is a bit confusing. So the application launcher always shows up on this screen even if you launch it from the other displayer. So that's a slight niggle, but nothing I can't sort of get round. So it's not too difficult to actually to set this up. There's a few things you need to do. We had to unbind some keyboard shortcuts for the dash to dock, and again, if you just disable the dash to dock extension, you get this weird thing where when you boot into Gnome, instead of booting into the desktop, it boots into the overview. So this is how we can basically go through and say, like, for I in 1 to 9, do G settings, switch to application. Then to make super number switch to the corresponding workspace, we do this for I in 9, do super I. And that basically lets us sort of do super 1, super 2, super 3 to switch to the workspaces. And then we've got down here shift. This is basically so we can use shift 1, 2, 3, 4 to actually move windows to different workspace windows, as it were. So we can, you know, do that, move that to 2, move that to 1, close that. So really makes it much quicker to move stuff around using the super key HJ, K and L and the number keys to move stuff across to different windows. Again, we disable the toggle overview and we rebind the activities to super R so that we can use the super L, super left key, as it were, the super key on the left hand side of the keyboard for our keyboard shortcuts. We focus the windows automatically, switch applications, as I've shown you. And remember, there are some settings like switching applications, which will show up in the keyboard shortcuts in the settings, but the switch application backwards only shows up in the dconf settings. As you'll notice, as I hover over here, you'll see you can just copy these to the clipboard, so you can just come through, you can copy these and actually just change these options. Close window, toggle full screen. There's another one here. You can set the volume increment to 5. So when you do press the keyboard shortcut to increase or decrease the volume, it will increase by a volume step of 5. You could change that to 10 or 20 or whatever. So that's another setting. But basically, what you need to do is install dconf sudo apt install dconf, I think it is, dconf editor, is it? Let me just check what's installed. Sudo apt in search dconf. Okay, yeah, dconf editor is what you want, and that will install dconf. And again, you can come through either in Gnome desktop WM key bindings and see if I've got one here that I've changed. Yeah, and basically you can see here it's got use default value. Just uncheck that and then put in your custom settings there. So if you've messed anything up, you can just come across and do use default value. And again, the other thing is you need to come into settings, multitasking. Make sure multitasking is dynamic workspaces, workspace on primary display only. Come down to keyboard, view and customize shortcuts, and you can see here you'll show up which ones have actually been changed. And again, I think there were a couple in here that I couldn't change in dconf, so they won't appear in my notes. So you'll actually need to change these in this section here. And I think the two primary ones were move to workspace on the left and move to workspace on the right. So that's bound to super H to go left, super L to go right. So you can see all the things that have been changed. Everything that's been changed in dconf should show up here, but there may be a few need tweak. Again, the sound and media, I do play or pause to alt, super and space. System, I disable the lock screen, restore keyboard shortcuts. I rebind show applications to control super P, and I disable the overview. Windows, yeah, close window, shift super C, that's disabled. What else did I change in there? Toggle full screen, super S. And again, my custom keyboard shortcuts here. Control super return for launching the Emacs client, and shift super and return to launch the URXV terminal. One note I will cover is URXVT by default has an incredibly ugly icon. If I come across to user, share applications, is it URXV? I think it might be RXVT Unicode. Okay. So this is the come on. Okay, there we go. A little bit of a lag there. Okay, all right. So, but by default, what you'll see here is there's this line icon URXVT underscore 48 times 48 XPM. So basically, what I've done is copied that user and that RxVT Unicode.desktop file to local share applications RxVT Unicode. What I've also done is I've changed it to from URXVT to executing URXVTC, which is the client, because I start the URXVT daemon. I auto start that so that the terminal starts quicker. And what I've done here is icon, yeah. There we go. Now it's showing it. Still a bit of a lag on the Wayland thing. Sorry about that. So yeah, so try execute URXVTC, execute URXVTC, and I've changed the icon to be equal to utilities terminal. And what that does is that uses this icon instead. So that's a much nicer icon than the default one, which is really ugly. The other thing that I'll show you is how we auto start the application. So s.config auto start UXVT desktop. So in .config auto start, what you can do is actually put desktop files or things to actually auto start. And what we're doing here is we're executing URXVTD. So that's the URXVT daemon. And that does actually show up in Gnome tweaks, I think. So if I come to tweaks, in Gnome tweaks, what you'll see here is startup applications, and you'll see URXVTD. If you click the plus button, it will actually give you a list of things you can, desktop entries that you can actually add to auto start. But what I found was I needed to create a custom one to set the URXVT daemon instead of just launching the terminal. So what this does is this launches the URXVT daemon in the background. It doesn't actually open the terminal when I start up. It just opens it just starts the daemon. And what that means is when I launch URXVT, it's just much quicker because it's using the client to connect to the daemon. So that's just a note on fixing the URXVT or the RxVT color Unicode terminal icon, and also getting it to auto start. So pretty much that's everything I wanted to cover, and I think this makes a really good Xmonad replacement. And again, reason why I switched to Gnome was because Sway doesn't support NVIDIA proprietary graphics drivers. KDE handles workspaces differently. They span both monitors. Also, the performance on KDE for NVIDIA under Wayland is supposed to be terrible. And the third reason I'm not using KDE is because basically it would mean I'd have to do a fresh install. So I didn't want to have to do that. And just doing this basically means that it's really quick to just install Gnome, stick, burn Gnome off, burn Ubuntu off onto a thumbstick, stick it in the computer, install Gnome, change a few settings, and you've got a sort of equivalent keyboard setup that you might have on Xmonad. Of course, you can, do stuff. You can I get that to split on the left? Okay, yeah, split windows on the left. It's not showing up on. There's still a few glitches recording Wayland on OBS. But overall, I think those keyboard shortcuts make using Gnome a lot easier. Much quicker to move windows about, switch between different desktops, different workspaces, move the windows about, toggle full screen. I mean, basically all I do is keep 3 windows open like this. There's a bit of lag here. So yeah, that's how I work. 1 window full screen for terminal, 1 window full screen for Emacs, and a window full screen for Firefox, and then MPV on my other display playing videos. So that's all I need. So why use Xmonad? The other issue with Xmonad, there is a Xmonad rescreen library or plugin or whatever you want to call it, that basically is supposed to make plugging in monitors easier and will sort of auto detect them, because typically when I start up Xmonad, I have to run scripts to detect the what monitors plug in using Xrandr, and then what happens is I've got to kill the window, because what happens is you do that and then if I use a Tint 2 panel, I have to kill the window, because otherwise the window won't maximize over the panel and stuff, and I just got fed up with it. And there's this Xmonad hooks rescreen thing that's supposed to make things easier, but I can't get my head around Haskell, and it's just too much hassle just to change something when you've got a flipping built-in thing here for displays. So just going to come across and show you displays when you plug them in it. They show up. I don't have to do anything. I can just get on with and doing the work. So it's much easier actually having all this desktop stuff, because the problem with tiling window managers and things like Xmonad is you end up having to build a desktop environment yourself anyway. You're going to have to set up a panel. You're going to have to do stuff like have all your icons and stuff. If you're using something like DWM, it comes with a panel, but then you've got to install another panel so your icons will show up. You've got to do stuff like install a lock screen, bind your keys to the volume keys, bind the keys to the keys for brightness or keyboard backlight. So I originally started on Mac OS, went to things like XFCE. I've done Arch Linux for several years, FreeBSD for several years. I've used DWM, i3, Xmonad. I've gone through the whole minimal thing, building everything up from scratch, and you just spend more time actually building stuff than actually getting on with work. It's like if you wanted to go for a drive somewhere, it's like having to build the car before you can get started, as opposed to open the door, getting in and driving off somewhere. So as long as I can get Gnome to do what I want, move things around, stuff like that, it's a lot easier for me to come through and actually just flipping edit, the dconf settings like this. I mean, that's pretty readable. You can see what that's doing. Gsettings set, this thing, toggle full screen. That's obvious. Whereas if I come across to something like this, I'm lost. So for me, just being able to install Gnome, change some dconf settings, actually get all the key bindings that I'm going to use in Xmonad anyway, is just much faster to do. You know, I can just whack Gnome on something, you know, whack Ubuntu on something, come through here, change some keyboard shortcuts, and I'm done without having to, you know, install Haskell, stack, build stuff from scratch, you know, set up Tint2, set up lock screens, all that kind of palaver. Why go through all that hassle when you can just use something that works out the box? So maybe it's just me getting old, but it's just much more convenient having all the things here. And the other thing is it's just much easier, you know, having things here, you know, changing your backlighting, your wired connection, your Wi-Fi, rather than having to switch to the command line to do something. And yeah, Gnome and Ubuntu may be like really boring. People say, oh yeah, it's a noob distro, but it's where all the development's going is Gnome. On the desktop, it's the default Linux desktop. So my take is it's good to get your head around it so that you can use it and get it to do what you want, rather than going through the whole palaver of setting up a window manager, which you can't understand the language it's written in to actually do stuff. You actually end up being less productive because you spend all your time fixing stuff, whereas literally all I use Xmonad for is putting stuff on different windows and moving it about a bit. So why go through all that hassle when I could just use Gnome and change the keyboard shortcuts? So that's all for now. I'll put links to all this under the video. I'll put the additional bit of documentation here for moving windows between displays. But it's really quick to set up. You know, basically all you just got to do is come across, copy these, it's paste them in the terminal for the ones you want. So it might be an idea just to go through and do them one by one if you don't like it. You can always go into dconf and reset them. And again, you also have to change a couple of things in the system settings. Again, so you got dconf again. So Gnome, there's two sections: Gnome desktop, WM. Okay, is it a bit of a delay there? Key bindings. Okay, delay. Yeah, there we go. So org Gnome desktop WM key bindings. One is one section you want to look at, and then Gnome shell, and then you have all the stuff like app switcher extensions, key bindings, stuff like that. I think was it Windows switcher? Yeah, current workspace only. So some of the dconf settings are the same as in here. Keyboard and mouse. So some of them are the same as in here, but there are some settings in here that are only available in dconf, like switching applications backwards. And again, I think there were some that don't show up in dconf that only show up here. So I think move to workspace on the left and move to workspace on the right were the two that I couldn't set in dconf, and you got to set in here. So basically all you got to do is go through, add those. Do you want to reload the view? No, don't know what I did there. But it's a hell of a lot easier than trying to get your head around Haskell or, hacking away at DWM or something. Just use gsettings, change some stuff about, and you can move windows about the same way as you would with Xmonad. With the added benefit you're running Wayland. So I'll put links to all this under the video, and hope that's useful.